Welcome to the Business of Thinking podcast. This is the place for high achievers who want more than motivation. They want mastery. Here we skip the surface level talk and go straight into the psychology of high performance.
Hello and welcome. My name is Richard Reed and you're joining me on the Business of Thinking. It's all about helping entrepreneurs and business leaders to strengthen the mindset behind high performance. And I'm delighted today to be joined by Laura Camacho, who is a leadership coach specializing in communication, and in particular, an area that's really close to my heart, introverts, helping introverts to perform to the best of their ability. So more on that later, but welcome, Laura. Fantastic to see you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me how you got into the work that you're doing, and then maybe we can have a bit of a deep dive into introversion and everything that goes with it.
Absolutely. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me. And I think the name of your show, The Business of Thinking, is absolutely brilliant. And congratulations on that, because I think with AI, kind of like the tendency is that we think it's going to take over our thinking, but no, actually we still have to keep thinking. So, and anyway, that's so brilliant. Well, I'm in the United States. I'm in a beautiful city named Charleston, South Carolina, very historical on the coast, a little bit like Cape Town, and that it's, it's got that history and that beauty. We don't have the wineries nearby like you have, but we do drink a lot of wine, have great food here, and I am from this area. And the South of the United States is known for being a little bit of rebellious, and I have a little bit of that in me. And I had a grandmother who was friends with two women in the 1950s, right, when supposedly women were not doing anything, that they both started multi-million-dollar businesses. They were both widowed. They were both left, with no education, children to take care of, in Texas, in the state of Texas, and they both grew multi-million-dollar companies. One of them, some of your listeners may be aware of, it's Mary Kay Cosmetics. It was a big cosmetic brand. It's not anymore. Another one did another retail company. So I had in my mind from an early age that I also wanted to have a multi-million-dollar business. And but even more than that, I wanted it to be an international business. But, that, like, how do you do that? Yeah. Like today, it seems so obvious. And back when I was in school, it was not so obvious. But I ended up marrying someone from Venezuela. I ended up living and working in Venezuela. I also had studied in Spain. I also got to live in Germany. So I got, I learned Spanish. I learned French. I ended up learning some German. So I always had that international business slant. But I also wanted a family, right? I have 3 kids. And so for a while, I ended up teaching at a university. That's how I got the PhD in communication. And that was, so we have to adapt our plans. And that was me adapting to being located in a rural part of North Carolina with my husband. And, there were just not that many international business opportunities like there had been in Caracas, where I had a very interesting work. And so I got to the, teaching while raising my young children. And then, I knew I was too rebellious for the academic points of view there. So in 2009, I put out my shingle. I'm going to fix communication problems, Richard. Like, what could be more obvious? Like, everybody knows communication's terrible in all companies. So I'm going to solve that problem for people with my handy dandy PhD in communication studies. And my biggest problem that I thought I would have to solve, Richard, was, what am I going to do with all that money, right? But it turns
nice problem to have, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's a problem of somebody very naive. So I learned that being the expert in your craft is not the same as selling your craft. And so that led to my journey. And then around the time I got my PhD, Susan King came out with a book in the United States called The Power of Quiet. And she basically legitimized being an introvert. And we'll just, use a working definition of an introvert being a person who needs to recharge after being with a lot of people.
Yeah.
I'm talking to people all day. So usually in the evenings, I'm, very quiet. But when I have a social engagement after another social engagement after working all day, like I'm ready for a silent retreat. I don't want anybody to talk to me. So I got into helping, introverts have particular challenges and assets we'll say, and opportunities in the workplace. And as the time went on, I just honed in more and more on that because that's where I could give the most value. So that's a short.
Brilliant, fantastic. And I said at the start of this podcast, it's a subject that's close to my heart. I see myself as an introvert, and all the things you were just describing there very much fit me. And sometimes it confuses people. People think, well, you're really sociable and confident.
Yeah.
They think, you have to be sort of a shrinking violet to be an introvert. But as you say, it's really where you get your energy from. And I always know when I need to withdraw and recharge. So definitely sort of resonates with me. But I guess one of the things that interests me most about the topic is that there almost seems to be a stigma about being an introvert, particularly if you are an introvert, that somehow you're substandard.
Yes.
So do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yes. No, there's so many false assumptions. And then they're all negative. Yeah. I guess like all false assumptions, but that could be even that we're snobby, that we think we're better than other people because we don't engage. One common misperception is that because we don't speak up in a meeting, then we don't have anything to say. And that can be extrapolated to, well, Laura's just not very interested or committed. She doesn't care. And that can lead to low visibility. It's just, I don't know if it's exactly the same in South Africa, but probably similar. And here in the United States, all other things being equal, two people in a company, that one is a chatterbox, always, chat, although it may take them a while to land the plane, when actually saying something of substance, versus a person who seldom speaks up, but they have the same background. The person who is more of a chatterer is going to get promoted because of, think about, psychology, like the more you just from a physical brain point of view, the more you hear someone talk, it's like they stay more ingrained in your mind and your brain. And so that their name comes up more often because you just have heard more come out of their mouth and you like them. They're usually can be gregarious, friendly, fun people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of negative.
Absolutely. And the other thing I find with
there.
introverts is that often, because they tend to process internally, the conversation's moved on. They've maybe got a really valid point to make, but the conversation's moved on because other people are talking and thinking out loud.
Yes, exactly. That's our Achilles heel. That is our Achilles heel, folks. If you're on the introvert side. Yeah. And that's what people come to me. Oh, Laura, I just can't think on my feet. And I'm like, well, me neither. It's just, because we are thinkers. Now, what happens is like in this situation, I'm being interviewed. I didn't know the questions. I don't need to know the questions because I've been interviewed so many times and I've been working at this thing for so long. I really do know things. But what will happen? What a good trick if you're in a company or if you're in a group setting is to do a little bit of preparation about what you could possibly speak up about and kind of plan ahead. That's a good trick. But being a thinker for the business of thinking is that's a total asset, folks. That is a good thing that you bring to the table. You do think. You can get to the point faster. In fact, introverts tend to be better public speakers because we plan ahead. We don't ramble. We don't go on and on. So it's a double-edged sword there. But definitely, if you find yourself like deer in the headlights, like by the time I figure out what I want to say, they've moved on. There is a way you can interrupt and say, hey, before we move on, I do want to say
for slowing the conversation down and bringing it back around.
Yeah. Before we move on, but you do have to get that out before they move on. But a lot of times you can sense like, oh, let's move on. The leader of the meeting will say it's time to move to the next item, and then you can just quickly say, you don't need to even be recognized, just say, hey, before we move on, I want to point out that, and kind of sell it first, like, I want to point this out. I think this will help us come to a better decision. And I want us to understand, whatever the thing is. So I have a little saying, sell it before you tell it. That helps introverts, because an extrovert might do that naturally. Like, my gosh, you won't believe this thing. It's so amazing. And it goes on and on and on. And then at the very end, you find out what the thing is.
So true.
And we're just this is the thing. And so it helps to sell it a little bit, before you.
The razzmatazz that you put around the idea. Yeah.
A little like a packaging, like if you go to a fancy store and you buy a diamond ring and you give it to somebody without the packaging, they're not going to be
falls flat.
They're not going to perceive the value versus, the fancy box and the bow and the velvet, like. It adds value.
Yeah, and definitely, as you said a moment ago, but perception is reality to some extent, isn't it? Actually,
it is.
How you present yourself makes a big difference to how you perceive. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is truly, you can get to a certain level in your career. Let's say if you're a dentist, a dentist who establishes rapport with his or her patients is going to make more money than a dentist who doesn't. But you don't need to be extroverted to be a great dentist. But in a company, at a certain level, your ability to influence people is a source of value. And to influence people, there needs to be some selling of the solution, the idea, the value. And so Warren Buffett, the famed investor, has said that learning to be a good communicator increases your market value by 50%. I don't know if that's even possible to validate, but of course, if you have two people and one can express things in a way that's interesting, one thing that we introverts can do better is we can learn to evoke curiosity, the way a novel, every chapter, you'll be at the end of the chapter and then they throw that cliffhanger to get you to read the next chapter. It's like, you're not going to believe this, Richard, but I found this solution that nobody thought was possible. You're like, oh, well, what is it? Tell me. Versus... Yeah, exactly. So those are the things that where we introverts learning these tricks and this just really, it's really a mindset of being a trusted advisor, but also making the thing more interesting. So, just like you make your kids eat their broccoli, you have to come up with all these stories about why you need to eat your broccoli. Yeah. It's you do the same thing at work.
Brilliant. And from what you just said a moment ago, it sounds as though the kind of people who are struggling with this in terms of making that next step up in their career, those are kind of your sweet spot, the people who've got all the ability, but are struggling to shine.
Yeah, and it's not only the ability, Richard. They're so smart. It's unbelievable. I'm in awe sometimes. It's like, wow, how did you do that? They're smart. They're high performers. You can get, this is another misnomer. We think because it's kind of like it is in school, that you turn in what the teacher asks, you give it to him or her, you get an A, rinse and repeat. And that's typically what an introvert high performer has experienced, elementary school, high school, college, possibly master's and beyond. But the work world, it is not exactly like that. And that's something you have to understand.
Yeah. And it's a different set of skills, isn't it? You go from just the pure professional skills to, as you say, having to influence people and create the right perception. You can be doing all the right things in the background, but if people aren't having some form of visibility on that, then you hit the blocks.
Exactly. Yeah. And for example, creating excitement. So, for example, I have this client I'm working with who works for a leading company that does cybersecurity. Okay. Had to remember. And I just heard someone, an investor. I was just hearing a podcast of an investor talking about this company and how great it was. And the way he talked about the company And the way this employee, this manager, this director of the company had talked about it, you would have thought it was two different companies. Like she had not learned to be like, to talk excited, like, oh, man, our company is one of the top. Our stock is on fire. People are, because think about it. You have a team of people working for you. Are you going to get more results out of them if they're excited about the company, or if they're like, whatever, it's fine? And they're taking their cues from you, the leader, and you may be like on fire, but not expressing that. And so people think, oh, well, Richard doesn't really care.
Yeah, and I get exactly that feedback from my wife whenever she cooks a meal. I love it, but it comes out in a way where the energy's already been taken out of the answer, the response. And I think that's often the risk, is that with being an introvert, you process internally. By the time the world hears it, the energy's gone from there.
Yes, exactly. And so I learned a tip from a life coach years ago. She said it's like to turn up the dial. Like if let's say somebody asks you, how are you doing? And you usually say, I'm fine. Well, you turn it up 10%. You say, oh, super. How are you?
Yeah.
You just turn, and over the time, you build like that muscle memory, you build up your resistance, because Richard, it takes more energy to do that. It's really, we introverts, to be mega successful, have to manage our energy. Because I remember Saturday night, I was like in a comatose, because a happy hour after work Friday turned into like a 5-hour event. I had Saturday full of stuff. And I was just, literally not wanting to talk to anybody because I just was drained. I enjoyed every single moment of it.
But
that's
you
the thing.
pay a price, don't you? Particularly if you're an introvert.
You do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And have you got any tips for any introverts that are listening? Because as you sort of alluded to earlier, often when you try to push back, when you try to protect your energy, or you react to not having that energy, people misinterpret that. They see you as being aloof or disinterested. Any tips for how people can navigate that?
Well, you need to, you look at your calendar, look at what you've got on the diary, and maybe use that word. We use calendar, diary, and you need to know like which meetings. You could probably rate them A, B, or C, and you're going to bring your energy, more energy to, say, an A meeting than a C meeting. That's one aspect. It's also who is in the room. And one way I find to compensate, say, for a low energy, like we'll say the situation with your wife, that you said that you loved the dinner, but you were exhausted, and so you didn't say it with very much enthusiasm. What can you do? You can write a note. You can send flowers. You can So you want to look for ways to make the conversations that you have to have already, they're already on your diary, and the ones that are important, how can you make them better? So you make them better by preparing, I'm going to make sure I mention this thing. One thing you can do to build rapport is be the one who notices and comments on things that other people don't.
Okay.
And you may be, because introverts tend to be more observant, right? So let's say that your colleague gets attacked a little bit by somebody in the meeting, and this colleague pushes back, and you tell the colleague, like, the way you handled that and you didn't lose your temper, I was so impressed and I was inspired. So noticing and commenting on the way people do their job, not just great job. I mean, here in America, we're always saying, great job, great interview, great talk. Everything is great. And so it becomes white noise. But when you say, like the name of your podcast, I still think that's so cool that you came up with the business of thinking. That's a lot more meaningful than saying, oh, what a great podcast you have. So noticing those things, you've got to look for ways that are kind of aligned with you. What is it that you observe? What is it that you notice? And can you send notes? Can you send a text? Hey, instead of saying it to their face, send them a text. Wow, your transitions in that presentation blew my socks off. How did you do that? That kind of thing. So you look for ways. What I think of it as buying insurance, because you'll know as an introvert, we've all experienced this. I know all of you introverts listening, that people have thoughts that you were mad or sad or depressed when you were just thinking. Like you're thinking, where should we go for dinner tonight? And somebody's like, are you okay? Because we're not, talking and we're inside our heads. So how do you compensate for that? What I think is to build the emotional bank account is a concept that Stephen Covey came up with in the 90s. And it was that you build your emotional relationship by, noticing sincere things, turning up not the actual volume, but just being very appreciative. If you come from a place of gratitude and not manipulation, people are going to feel it. And I think that, I'm so grateful that, we were able to start our meeting on time and that I can always count on that you're not going to waste my time. I really appreciate that. That would be, that would be expressing gratitude. And it feels very authentic. So, looking for things to appreciate around you and commenting on them. It's a low, what is it?
Low hanging fruit?
A heavy lift versus a light lift. Light lift.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you're saying. You didn't quite use this word, but you were sort of alluding by the sound of things to being authentic. And I think that's
yes.
Speaking personally, and what I've noticed in lots of other introverts is they're not interested in necessarily collecting lots and lots of friends. They're very sort of deep, authentic connections.
Yes, but you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Absolutely, like we find small talk boring. Let's get to it. Why are we in this room? Down to business. So that's, I get that. But you also can, what I think it helps to think of it as you helping other people, helping to build a better environment by noticing and commenting and appreciating more. I think that you can do that from a place of authenticity. You're not expecting, since I said this nice thing to Richard, he's going to do something nice for me. No, just like really, because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, fantastic advice. And if you're a leader listening to this podcast today, and you get the sense you've got some introverts in your team or people you interact with on a regular basis who are introverts, how might you sort of play to their strengths a little bit more, bring the best out of them?
Oh, such a good question, Rich. I'm so glad you asked that. Because a leader who is extrovert, I've had so many talk to me and say, Richard's on my team and he's kind of quiet. I thought he didn't care. I didn't think about him being
And that's the thing, isn't it? We judge people by our own standards. If us being quiet is meaning disinterested, we assume that's what it means for somebody else. Yeah.
Yes. It's so having that awareness is fantastic. But a junior person who is introverted, because it's one thing when you make it to, say, director, like the middle of the hierarchy, you learn a little bit. But when you're out of college, say the first few years of your career, you're an introvert, you're not going to feel like, I need to speak up necessarily. But you want to get their ideas, right? So there are two or three things. So one is that giving the introvert, knowing that our Achilles heel is speaking up spontaneously, is not our brain just doesn't work as well. So saying, hey, Richard, we're going to have this, this meeting this afternoon. I really would like your thoughts on this topic. So Richard is like, I'm on it. And it comes with, a list, a well-organized, intelligent list of 3 or 4 things that we should consider on that topic, because he had time to think about them without like the proverbial light in his eyes.
Yeah, and that's a common one, isn't it? A lot of people have meetings for the sake of meetings, and they don't explain what the agenda is. So people are turning up thinking on their feet. And as you say, if you're an introvert, that's even harder.
It is. And then they like think of something else. And then it's like, oh, well, so Richard, what do you think about this thing that was not on the agenda that you've never heard of? And you're like, you're not even sure what they're talking about. That is, and then it really does happen. You're right. So giving your introverts heads up, could be a text, Slack message. Hey, I would really like your input on this topic. Another way is to, in the meeting, going from most junior to most senior, say, I would like everybody to give one idea about this topic. Having people, let's have a minute, and I just want people to write on the whiteboard, some ideas. It just ways of getting feedback and ideas from a person without that pressure that especially a more junior introvert would feel. Eventually that introvert will build the muscle and build the habit of speaking up and being organized and structured, and using these sayings like, before we move on, I want to mention this, or this is important because, things that are value indicators. You learn to use those to flag people to listen to you.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I guess essentially it's generating psychological safety, isn't it? Just making everybody feel included and everybody feels safe to be who they are.
Right. And everybody should not, you don't want everybody to be a flaming extrovert talking all the time. Once I did a workshop, usually, I'm dealing with a variety of personality types, but I once early did a workshop for pharmaceutical sales reps, and I hardly talked at all. They were the whole time. I was like, oh, this is how they are. Yeah. When you put them in a room, this is what it looks like. I was like, hey guys, we need to go over this material. So
it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting we get the different dynamics together. And I think before we did today's recording, we met briefly a week or two ago, didn't we, to discuss what we were going to record today. And I think I mentioned an example to you. For me, sums up some of the pitfalls when you get introverts and extroverts coming together. There was an interview a few years ago. It was the Graham Norton show in the UK. And they had Tom Jones and Gary Barlow at Take That. And they both sort of came on, did their piece. And then after that, Will Smith came on, and Will Smith is an absolute force of nature. And obviously was there to promote a film, but you could physically see the other two getting smaller and smaller and quieter because he was just completely overshadowing them. I think that's one of the risks, isn't it? Actually, you can exclude other people.
Yes, it is.
They come away feeling worse for wear, but also you don't get to see the true value of those people.
Exactly. That is such a great example of a highly charismatic person, like literally sucking out the oxygen in the room. And that's where the charismatic person needs to be aware of that and to shine the light on the other people there, and to intentionally, call them out and say how honored you are to be with them, and to like open up some space for them. It's really, I guess, in this case, he was so focused on promoting his film that he didn't mind his manners, but it would have been better to use that star power to say, to deflect, right? You don't need all the attention, but everybody's human.
Yeah, and it's just something that I observe that I've noticed in other social situations as well. So it's really about being emotionally intelligent, isn't it? And think what does the environment need for everybody to feel included?
Yes. And I want to say something on this topic. I'm so glad you brought that up for our audience. Like, if you're listening and you're thinking about meetings where somebody, Mary or Bob is like always dominating, that's not good for the people in the meeting. It's not good for the person who's dominating. And, there's different ways to go about it. Ideally, somebody who's in charge of the meeting, that's showing that they're not controlling the structure of the meeting very well. It's a lack of leadership, to be frank about it. But there are different ways you can go about kind of rebalancing. You want to calibrate the meeting so that you're hearing from more people, right? And so if you're having that situation, please fix it or get it fixed. I mean, it is not serving you or the people in the room or the company by allowing that to continue. It's just, especially after COVID, or even in the virtual meetings, it was more pronounced that the talkers were less aware that they were doing all the talking because we weren't in the same room. And then the quieter people felt more awkward because they're talking into a little green dot.
It's easy to make things more polarized, isn't it, than they already are.
Yes. So we need to remedy that. And that's a way of, again, I'm all about using communication and these interpersonal dynamics to add value to the situation so everybody has a better outcome.
Yeah, I'm all for that. And I think, the risk is that when you don't have that, not only do you make people feel marginalized, but you create an echo chamber, don't you? It's the same people talking and not necessarily the people with all the good ideas.
Exactly. And it's just kind of rinse and repeat. And then people, someone I spoke to, he mentioned that it's not only that we don't hear everybody's ideas, but listen to this, it can get worse. It can be worse. That let's say you have two introverts on your team that are on the quiet side and we're not hearing from them. They're not speaking up. And not only are you not getting their ideas, but inside they're like less motivated every time because they're like, well, why should I say anything? They never call on me. And they're like, you saw these two highly respected professionals shrink on stage. The same thing is going on with people who feel ignored or left out just because they're not skilled at injecting themselves.
And if that's happening continually week on week, then it becomes compounded, doesn't it? And people become disengaged.
Yes, exactly. Disengaged is the word. And so, they're doing their work, checking the boxes, but you're not really getting, what they're capable of contributing.
Absolutely. Big advocate of that idea of sort of inclusive leadership, definitely. Any other tips for people who are sort of trying to navigate being an introvert? Anything else that you think would be useful for them to know?
Well, I think that we can. I mentioned it briefly, but I'll go back to the beginning of the mindset of the trusted advisor, because too many introverts think that speaking up is ego. It's like, well, that I think my ideas are better than your ideas. And that's not, as we all know, that is not reality. It's, there's a lot of factors in play, and you need to think about, put on your hat of trusted advisor. Like, running a company exists to create value, create jobs, create services and products. And it's not easy. And every day it's more complicated and more different. Now we have the challenge of AI. We have different global market dynamics. So we need you. We need everybody to figure out how to make things better. So put on your hat of trusted advisor and realize that it's not, I think what a lot of introverts and other people maybe fall into this too, of thinking it's binary. That either I speak up and dominate the meeting and I'm, Miss Arrogant, or I'm, church mouse not saying anything. No. Trusted advisor. What could you say that would help people make a better decision? And if you just start on that, and then once you have ideas and solutions, and let's say that you have a presentation that you have to give no matter what anyway, how can you make it more interesting? How can you get, instead of telling the people the thing, maybe you can ask them, what do they think the top trends are in digital marketing for 2025 or 2026? Instead of just saying, well, the top 5 trends or blah, 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 be like, well, you guys are experts. What do you think was trend number 1? And, getting more engagement. It's much more easy to engage when you're being asked questions, when somebody just makes it more interesting, creates curiosity. Don't see communication as just the transfer of information. That would be a big takeaway. There's much more
than that. So
that.
agree. And I think so many introverts feel they've got to put on a performance and talk for the sake of talking. But I think it's so true what you said, that actually there's a great opportunity there. And a lot of them have the skills to do this, to be active listeners, to make people really reflect on their ideas, to influence them by showing that initial curiosity. So it's a great skill.
Exactly.
Great skill.
You're smarter. Yeah. You're smarter. Use that brain to bring your audience in. Ask an intriguing question. Share a fascinating statistic. Like, it's not just the transfer of information. That's boring. And we're all pride ourselves on being data driven. Well, the reality is we are drowning in data. What we need are filters. Be a filter. Don't be a data point. Yeah, be a human. Yeah, that's also a good suggestion. I'll go with that too. Be human. Be yourself.
Absolutely. And I think for me, that's the biggest thing that I'm taking away from today. It's be yourself, isn't it? Be comfortable with being yourself.
Yeah.
And really, I guess part of today is also about encouraging the people around them to help them to be themselves and to legitimize that and support that.
Exactly. And then we're all better off. It's more interesting. It's more fun. When we move beyond, the status quo, or move beyond resentment because, somebody's always dominating the conversation. It's just better. Don't be afraid of rocking the boat and changing up things a little bit. That's good for you. It's good for everybody.
Yeah. And I think absolutely wherever you are, whether you're introvert, extrovert, I think for anybody, it's good to be flexible, isn't it? And to come outside of your comfort zone. Even if you've got a preferred way of being, just come out of that sometimes. Grow. We've all got potential that we don't explore.
And none of what we're saying to anybody listening, none of this is about changing your personality. It's simply adding more tools to your communication toolbox and realizing that when you can get people into engaged with your topic, then everything else comes out better.
Yeah, brilliant. Fantastic, Laura. So tell us a little bit about what you're working on at the moment. You've got any interesting projects on the go at the moment?
Well, I have a new self-assessment that I came up with recently, and it's an executive presence scorecard. Now, executive presence is like a shortcut. Think of that as a way that says of influence. Like you're able to influence, that you have both competence and confidence, but you also are charming. Like you're not a robot, and you're not Mr. Know-it-all or Mrs. Know-it-all. So it's a mix of warmth and presence and competence. And so I have a self-assessment that it has 4 categories. It's going to ask you just a few questions about how clear is your personal brand, like who were you in the company, like how do you do your job differently from other people, and then how well do you speak up in meetings? Hello, all you introverts, like this is like this is for you. And then the other one is presentations. I'm guessing that everybody listening is a solid in presentations, but you can make them more interesting and more engaging. And then finally, leadership. So there's 4 categories of questions. It gives you a score, and according to your score, it'll say your top, you need to work on this, or you really need to work on this. But you'll know which category is your strength and where you have more opportunity to improvement. If you want, as an assessment, if you want a copy of it, I'm super happy to give it to you. I want you to email me and we'll put this in the show notes, but it's hello@speakupwithlaura.com and Laura, and just put score in the subject line. I'll send you the link. You take the assessment and you'll get some information, not only about where you are on that, but like what are the areas that you could improve. You can look at, this is designed to help you think about the way you present and communicate at work.
Amazing. Thank you, Laura. So you know where to find out if you're interested in that. And as Laura said, we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah. Just the score and just send me the email and put score or just if you just send me an email with nothing,
You'll still get it anyway.
I'll say, yeah, especially if it has ZA at the end. I'll be like, that Richard sent me this person. I know what he wants, even if they're two. They don't remember what else to do. Or
if in doubt, I can pass those messages on if anybody wants to find out more. But Laura, thank you so much for today. Really enjoyed it. And I think there's so much more we can say around this topic. And it'd be great to get you back on again at some point just to sort of follow up on this.
Yes.
And find out what you do.
I would love that. That would be great, Richard. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. This was so fun. And we'll catch everybody another time.
Brilliant. Thanks, everyone. That's all for this time. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.
This is the business of thinking. Mastery doesn't end here. See you in the next episode.